Tianbao Fu Yao Lu. Chapter 155. Artifacts entering the body. Let's think about what to do next, Li Jinglong said at last. Mo Rijin said, we must first straighten out the matters at hand, otherwise we'll all be lost in the clouds. Li Jinglong ed. He had been listening to the Carpiao this entire time, and it just so happened that Zhao Yun was also there and had seen the entire process. So, they began from Hung Jun, and went over the entire process of what had happened in the Tongtian Futu from start to finish based on their memories. At that time, the seal of the heart lamp shattered in my body, Hung Jun said. And I also saw Akalanatha. Li Jinglong frowned deeply as he studied Hung Jun. For Akalanatha to have suddenly appeared when Hung Jun activated the earth vein array in the Tongtian Futu was something that no one had foreseen. Plus, there was also the matter of the golden Yao binding rope that had been pulled out from Hung Jun's body. As he spoke of that, Hung Jun went to go search through Li Jinglong's pack, but that artifact had remained the entire time with Li Jinglong, so what had appeared from his own body that day? What is this made of? Lu Su asked, changing the topic. It's been so many years, yet it still hasn't frayed. It's made from jiao sinew, mixed with the unearthly refined gold from Kunlun, Zhao Yun replied. Under the weak glow of the sunlight, he showed the rest of them the strange symbols that had appeared over the Yao binding rope. When he was asked about how he had gotten the Yao binding rope, Hung Jun explained it once again. As everyone listened, they began to look askance at each other. Before, in Luoyang, when they had just briefly seen each other, they had not spoken of it. Now that they remembered, Hung Jun's story stunned everyone. What's wrong? Hung Jun asked uneasily. Li Jinglong murmured, the Yao binding rope went into your body. When Hung Jun was reminded of that, he instantly understood as well. Was it because of that the earth vein array was destroyed? Hung Jun dimly felt a sense of foreboding unease. This had finally proven that it was because something had gone wrong with him that the entire array had fallen one step short of success. No, Li Jinglong said. It was not because of you, but because of me. Everyone was taken aback. What? Li Jinglong said, our failure this time was because I had. Anyways, my luck is not good, and through a series of coincidences, the heart lamp doesn't actually acknowledge me either, which was why the earth vein array was destroyed. That actually saved my life. After Li Jinglong had heard all of that, he understood basically everything. When he had released the full power of the heart lamp as he called a god down to earth, the towering strength that had poured into him had instantly destroyed some barrier in his body. And this barrier was connected to the past that he had completely forgotten, that stretch of memories encompassing the 2 years that he and Hung Jun had known each other when they were young. Kong Xian and Jia Yu's death, and Hung Jun's loss of his entire family, at the heart of it, was simply due to the fact that Li Jinglong had not been willing to stand idly by and watch as Hung Jun left him. And after that tragedy had played out, Qing Xiang had hurried to the scene and used a spell to seal away his and Hung Jun's memories. It was also because of this that Li Jinglong finally understood why, every time he saw Qing Xiang, he felt as if Qing Xiang was kind of familiar, and why, to Hung Jun, he always acted on the impulse that arose in him to make amends. Even after regaining the Sword of Wisdom, there had always been that mysterious push that had propelled him forward, to cultivate, to traipse through the famous mountains and valleys for the sake of finding someone he didn't even know the identity of. To subdue Yao, to exorcise devils, all of this was the price that he had been destined to pay. And in the instant the seal had shattered, he had remembered everything of the past, and that had shaken him. The heart lamp had sensed his obsession, and had instead left his body, thus passing judgment on the crimes that he had committed. In the past few days that he had been brought out of the city, Li Jinglong had been constantly mulling over every single bit and piece from those 2 years. With the breaking of Qing Xiang's seal, those memories had become extraordinarily clear. That one overcast, rainy day, when he had, through a series of coincidences, ended up setting foot in the ruins of the exorcism department. He had turned his face to the statue of Akalanatha. When the image of the god appeared, he had, for the sake of making Hung Jun stay, laid out a trap and lured Hung Jun onwards to this grand finale. Why? Mo Rijin asked uneasily, calling Li Jinglong back from his musings. Li Jinglong replied, because I am not. I am not the inheritor of the heart lamp. From the very beginning, the heart lamp had chosen wrong. There's no such thing, Hung Jun interrupted. It was all my fault. I made a mistake. It has nothing to do with anyone else. Everyone was watching Hung Jun, and he continued, but the mistakes have already been made. After this, are we going to go back and seek out Lushan again and seal him away? How will we seal him? Li Jinglong asked. Without the 6 weapons of Akalanatha, and without the heart lamp, we can't rely on anything anymore. All we can do is flee. Hung Jun thought for a bit, before saying, the Kun god might have a way. He definitely must have foreseen this moment. After all, when we were taking action in Luoyang. Don't bring him up, Li Jinglong said heatedly in reply, frowning deeply. I don't want to hear anything more about his lofty philosophizing of the future. He was the one to teach me the spell to call down a god, yet what good did that do? When we were on our mission in Luoyang, the Kun god did not appear. Hung Jun said, ignoring what Li Jinglong had said. That means that something must have happened in the meantime, or we are still far from when this is supposed to end. I don't believe in destiny. Li Jinglong said. I do, Hung Jun replied. If, in the end, everything happens how I saw, that'll be alright as long as everyone can survive. What future did you see? Li Jinglong suddenly asked. The conversation came to an abrupt halt with that. Hung Jun didn't want to elaborate on that any further, and the atmosphere in the room grew a little tense. Lu Su suddenly said, Hung Jun. Mo Rijin added, Zenchi, you're tired. You should rest for a bit first. Li Jinglong breathed in deeply. Lu Su pushed the door open and left, while Mo Rijin addressed the rest of them. Everyone, let's disperse for now. In these next few days, we'll slowly come up with a plan. Hung Jun could feel that Li Jinglong's emotions were very unstable. After losing the heart lamp, he was truly a little quick to anger, so it might be better to let him be by himself for a bit to calm down. He said to Li Jinglong, I'll go outside for some fresh air. Li Jinglong sat in his corner, and he remained silent, as if he was in deep thought. Have you had any dreams recently? Lu Su asked Hung Jun as he came to the backyard. The snow had stopped, and so had the wind. The entire world was oddly still, and the pale white afternoon light shone down over their heads. I have, Hung Jun said calmly. The barrier of the heart lamp shattered, so I've been having dreams every night. Lu Su immediately grew worried. He watched Hung Jun fixedly. It hadn't been until Li Jinglong had been injured this time that he realized Hung Jun, who had lost the protection of the heart lamp, actually possessed such a strong determination. Jinglong first lost the heart lamp, Hung Jun said, which then influenced the heart lamp barrier that he had cast on me, which had sealed away my nightmare devil. That's how it is, right? The Yao binding rope then sensed the nightmare devil in my body, and that was why Akalanatha appeared. That's right. Lu Su looked into Hung Jun's eyes. Hung Jun asked, then where did the heart lamp go? Last night, even as I was falling asleep, I was thinking about this. Lu Su didn't know much about the heart lamp, so he was nonplussed as well, but with what Hung Jun knew, the heart lamp shouldn't have run off on its own. According to Li Jinglong's description, it had left him right after he fainted. Would it then have returned? He remembered the first time that Qing Xiang had handed him this light. It had been stored in an artifact, so technically, there should have been something that its power was contained in. If they were lucky, it might still be in Li Jinglong's body. You'd best not mention luck to him, Lu Su said. Hung Jun pressed one hand to his forehead, helpless. All right. The most pressing matter currently is to find the heart lamp once more. I feel like the Kun God probably knows where it's gone to, and even if he doesn't use his foresight, he is the one who knows the heart lamp the best in this world. What then, after it is found? Lu Su asked. Let's act according to the original plan, Hung Jun said. Since Jinglong has already failed, we can only depend on me now. Lu Su and Hung Jun looked silently at each other for a long time, before Lu Su said, you would, just like this, you. Hung Jun smiled slightly. Don't be foolish. If everyone can survive, that'll be such a good thing. No, I'm saying, Lu Su was frowning deeply, but finally he gave up on persuading Hung Jun away from this course of action. He simply said, Jiga. And, Hung Jun replied. From now on, Lu Su said, I will not really be able to control the nightmare devil in your body anymore. I know. Last night, Hung Jun had nightmares again. In the dream, he had seen the endless suffering in the human realm, the pasts of those corpse ghosts that fell in battle, as well as the mortals that they had once slaughtered, all of those causes and effects poured uncontrollably into him. In contrast to how he had startled awake from those dreams very early on, Hung Jun had already slowly accustomed himself to being able to bear them, and gradually, those nightmares no longer brought him shock or pain. What replaced them was the endless sorrow and pity that he felt during those dreams. The seed of Mara is slowly awakening, Lu Su whispered very quietly. After this, their sentiment in the world will gather towards you, due to the attractive force of the devil seed. I can sense that, Hung Jun murmured. But for some reason, I don't feel pain. I only feel very sad. I think that I am also slowly starting to understand why Mahamayuri bears both the face of a god and a devil. He lifted his head, looking out at the sky above, the earth below, and the distant mountains. Too many people had died in this village, and after he woke, every soul seemed to be wailing to him about the pain of their lives and the cruelty of their deaths. They struggled against each other as they tried to enter his heart, as if this was the only way that they could gain some sort of predestined salvation. Why, he is the one who will take away the resentment, the vengeful souls who cannot free themselves, Hung Jun said. Returning to the divine and earth veins is, perhaps, the stipulation that Mahamayuri and Akalanatha had agreed upon once upon a time. This is something that I am destined to do, and no one can help me escape from that duty. It was then that Morajin walked out of Li Jinglong's room. He's found this a little hard to bear, for the time being, Morajin said to Hung Jun. His temper isn't good, don't let it get to you. Hung Jun said in reply, what I love is not the heart lamp, nor is it the version of him who possessed the heart lamp. What I love is him. But when you met Zenji, under the influence of the heart lamp, he was, Morajin could see where the discrepancy lay as well, but he wisely did not continue. Lu Su asked, why do you guys have such single-track minds? When Hung Jun first liked Li Jinglong, who knows where the heart lamp even was? Hung Jun began to chuckle. Morajin was absolutely lost, he didn't know of Hung Jun and Li Jinglong's shared childhood past. He had simply been worried over their argument. However, to Hung Jun, the love that he felt for Li Jinglong was more than enough to support them through all of this. He had accepted his perfection and his wisdom, but he had also accepted all of the places where he was lacking, just like how Li Jinglong had once encompassed everything that he was. Now, Hung Jun would naturally accept all of him as well. 3 days ago, ever since he woke, he hadn't spoken a single word, Morajin said. It wasn't until you went in last night that he truly started to talk. This was new information to Hung Jun, and he nodded at that, saying, let me keep him company ba. Hung Jun went inside. Morajin and Lu Su exchanged a glance, and Morajin lifted an eyebrow. Lu Su nodded, meaning that he had told him everything. Morajin said, then is he Lu Su made a shh gesture, meaning he shouldn't ask any further. Let's warm ourselves by the fire first, Lu Su said. Let's enjoy every day that we have where everyone is still here. Morajin lowered his head and fell silent for a moment, before pulling out a silk pouch from his clothes. That was the one that Lu Su had briefly taken that day in Luoyang. He opened his palm and handed it to Lu Su. Lu Su reached out a hand. If you take it, that means that you're willing to marry me, Morajin said, no matter what happens in the future. I haven't decided yet, Lu Su said, looking up at Morajin. Then why don't you think about it some more? Morajin replied. But there are many things in this world that we would be better off not thinking too thoroughly about, Lu Su replied at last, taking that pouch with a faint smile. Inside the pouch was a fang that the grey wolf had shed in the past, still with a bit of blood at its base, and that dragon scale that Li Jinglong had distributed to them. When Hung Jun went back inside the room, Li Jinglong was still lying quietly on the bed as he had been. There's no need to seek out the Kun god, Li Jinglong suddenly said. If he foresaw all of this, then he'll definitely come to find us. Though Li Jinglong's moods had grown a lot more despondent, Hung Jun could not help but admit that his intelligence hadn't waned at all. Then should we wait in the village? Hung Jun said, and as he spoke, he scooted forward to kiss Li Jinglong. After the kiss, Li Jinglong's eyes seemed to gain a little bit of brilliance. Were you angry just now? Li Jinglong asked. I wasn't. You were angry, Li Jinglong said, a little stubbornly. I sensed it. I really wasn't. Hung Jun wanted nothing more than to chuckle at that, but Li Jinglong was starting to worry a little again, and he asked, just now, in front of them, did it look like I was forgetting myself a little there? You didn't, you didn't, you didn't, Hung Jun replied earnestly. Get up and take a walk. Morajin said that you should move about a little, otherwise you might get bed sores. I can recover, Li Jinglong said. So, Hung Jun reached under his arms and helped him up. Li Jinglong was in so much pain that his expression twisted a little. Hung Jun knew that he must have been in a great deal of pain, but he pretended not to see. With great difficulty, Li Jinglong stood up straight, and Hung Jun slung his arm over his shoulders as he carefully stepped forward. The bone breaks seem to have basically recovered, Li Jinglong said. In the future, they shouldn't pose a major issue. Li Jinglong had repeated that in various forms too many times, but Hung Jun still replied patiently, remember that day when you climbed up the Taihang Mountains and took me away? Li Jinglong gritted his teeth against the extreme pain throughout his body, his forehead covered in sweat. He took another step. From that day on, I had thought, Hung Jun said, that in this life, no matter what we become, we'll always be together. Li Jinglong suddenly asked, even if something has happened between us before, does that also not matter? Hung Jun startled, and he asked, why do you say that? Li Jinglong replied awkwardly, nothing much. Hung Jun thought, could Li Jinglong have remembered it all? He had been too odd recently, as if too many burdens of the heart weighed down on him. In this moment, their expressions were very different, but they were both thinking of the same stretch of memories. 2 years ago, across the vast wildernesses of the northwest, as Hung Jun had galloped away from Dunhuang, Li Jinglong had caught up and sat astride him, grabbed his hands tightly in his own, and bellowed at him, what exactly is going on with you? Come, take another step, Hung Jun said. Li Jinglong took another step, but it was at that very moment that the daylight outside darkened, and Hung Jun suddenly felt a bone-piercing chill flood into the room. Sit here for a bit, Hung Jun immediately said, before swiftly walking outside. Morajin stood on the roof, looking into the distance. Everywhere that the eye could see, there was nothing more than vast wilderness. In the distance, eagles spiraled by as they scouted. A cloud of birds filled the sky, and the flock was currently sweeping towards the secluded village. End chapter. Tianbao Fu Yao Lu. Chapter 156. Traveling west to Tong Pass. Are they humans or are they Yao? Hung Jun asked. Humans, Mo Rejin replied. It's the rebels. Let's go. We must leave this place. Hung Jun protested, it might not be. Mo Rejin looked at Hung Jun, and after a moment of silence, Hung Jun said, forget it, let's retreat. Hung Jun really could not bring himself to attack mortals who had no way to fight back, so he and Mo Rejin leapt off the roof to inform the rest of the group that they needed to make preparations to leave. As soon as Zhao Yun heard, he said, I'll go spray them to death. Don't. Hung Jun said. Do not kill mortals. Lu Su dragged over a simple snow cart, and the grey wolf, with a shake of its fur, had the group latch the cart to its body. The Carpiao wanted to go clean things up, but the grey wolf roared quietly, there's no more time. Don't pack it up. The Carpiao shouted in protest, if I don't pack it up, what will you eat? The sound of hooves was already drawing close to the village, and the ground had begun to shake. The movements of the rebels were even vaster than that of the corpse ghost army that they had seen in Liangzhou. Zhao Yun carried a bag of flour out and tossed it onto the cart, while Hung Jun carried Li Jinglong and placed him in. The grey wolf shouted, if you won't go, I'm going to leave you behind. The Carpiao shouted, just a second. The Carpiao dragged out a bag of rice and hurriedly tossed it onto the cart, spilling quite a lot in the process. Hung Jun grabbed it and tossed it in, and Zhao Yun said, I can also grab. Go. Hung Jun left him no room to protest as he grabbed Zhao Yun around the head and tossed him into the cart, while he and Lu Su, one on either side, leapt on. The grey wolf bent its body to pull the cart, its foreclaws digging into the ground, sending up flurries of snow that sprayed them in the face. Why is it so heavy? Don't turn big. Lu Su shouted. You'll tip us over. The grey wolf could only keep its body a moderate size, because if it made itself large, it would flip the shaft of the cart over. It scrabbled against the ground desperately, but after doing so for a good while, it had only moved several jong forward. The thudding hoofbeats behind them were only half a li distant by then. Everyone. I'd best get off and run, Lu Su said, pressing a hand to his forehead. No need, the grey wolf panted. Once I start running, we'll move fast. That snow cart moved forward foot by foot, and slowly it began to speed up. When Hung Jun looked back, he saw that a grand army, thousands of men strong, had rushed into the village. Someone had already discovered them, and shouted, what's that? Someone's there. Capture them. And with that, the rebels charged towards them. However, the grey wolf's cart-pulling speed rose, and it began to speed along on the plains. Behind it, the rebels evidently were not willing to let them go, as they split off a squad of about 100 men, who began to chase after them in a heart-pounding pursuit across the snowy plains. Is there anyone else? The grey wolf roared. Knock them down. They're so annoying. It's too far. Lu Su shouted back. There's no way for us to use magic. Their pursuers grew greater and greater in number, and they raced along across the snowy plain towards the group. From time to time, there would be rocks protruding out of the ground, and the snow cart jostled along, its speed varying from fast to slow every moment. The jostling made Li Jinglong's entire body hurt, and he turned to look, before saying, charge up the short hill towards the forest. In the distance there was a slope, on which was a copse of trees. With that, the grey wolf turned around. Li Jinglong said to Hung Jun, toss the Yao binding rope out. Hung Jun. Quickly now. Li Jinglong shouted. Right then, the grey wolf dashed into the trees, crashing through countless branches. Hung Jun asked, how am I supposed to use it? Just like how you use an artifact. Li Jinglong shouted back. Hung Jun asked, is that really all right? Lu Su shouted, just do as he says. Li Jinglong added loudly, we're out of time. What are you shouting at me for? Hung Jun yelled back, enraged. Li Jinglong hurriedly raised his hands and begged for forgiveness. Hung Jun was still unsure about this, because no matter how he looked at it, he figured that he and this magic weapon had no fate tying them together, so how could he make it do what he wanted? But since Li Jinglong had said so, then he had no choice but to pull out the Yao binding rope, and as if he was using his immortal slaying throwing knives, poured his mana into the weapon. Instantly, light burst forth from the Yao binding rope, and with a shua, it lit up with a golden light. Hung Jun was dumbfounded. How could this be? Throw it? This result confirmed Li Jinglong's guess. Hung Jun subconsciously tossed the Yao binding rope out, and with a flash of golden light, the cord wrapped itself around two large trees. As the grey wolf sprinted along, it grew longer and longer. In the next moment, their pursuers raced into the forest, only for their horses to trip and fall, sending them crashing into each other until they were a heap on the ground. There were more and more pursuers behind them, who all ended up crashing into that squadron that had overturned their horses. With a long howl, the grey wolf dashed out of the trees and down the low slope. Behind it was a huge ball of men and horses engulfed in snow, and hundreds of people came thundering down in that snowball. The group's mouths all twitched upon seeing that sight, as the grey wolf turned back and asked, "Have we left them behind? My God! What are you all doing?" Avalanche. The grey wolf was greatly frightened by those dozens of huge snowballs, and it burst into a dead sprint. Behind it, countless snowballs came rolling at them like wheels of a cart. That scene was very magnificent to behold. Hung Jun even tugged on the Yao binding rope from time to time, afraid that it would catch on one of the snowballs. "Are you jumping rope?" Li Jinglong called loudly. "Put the artifact away." When Hung Jun thought about it, that was true, so he called the Yao binding rope back. The snowballs slowly sank into the flat snowy ground of the plains, and they finally managed to shake off their pursuers. The snow had begun to fall again, but the grey wolf did not stop, heat radiating off its body. Everyone was crowded up against each other on the cart, so when Hung Jun placed the phoenix plume in Li Jinglong's lap, everyone gathered around him to warm up. "You're so smart," Lu Su said. Li Jinglong knew that the exorcists had all been afraid that he had been sliding into despondency these past few days, so they came up with all kinds of ways to comfort him. Lu Su's words naturally did not make him feel any more thankful, and he said, even more glumly, "The Yao binding rope has recognized you as its master, Hung Jun." "No way!" Hung Jun exclaimed, very taken aback. "Why's that?" Mahamayuri and Akalanatha had always been at odds with each other, and he even had the seed of Mara in his body, yet the Yao binding rope had recognized him as its master? "Why don't you give it a try?" Lu Su asked. "To confirm if you really are." Hung Jun tried to call up the Yao binding rope, and where he imagined it, it appeared, before then coiling up his arm. The Carpio whistled. "Wow, what a treasure! The little highness is one with the devil god," Zhao Yun said. "Isn't it very normal for him to be able to use this artifact?" Hung Jun thought, it isn't normal at all, is it? But when he looked towards Li Jinglong's gaze was very complicated, and he replied, "Congratulations, Hung Jun." But this, Hung Jun thought to himself, the duty of Akalanatha's successor is to exorcise devils. As of now, if I am the successor, then I'll have to exorcise devils, so doesn't that mean I'll be exorcising myself? Why not bring out the sword of wisdom so that he can try it out too? Li Jinglong asked. "It's in the luggage," the grey wolf replied, pulling the snow cart along. "This is really too hard to pull." Hung Jun was about to grab the sword of wisdom, but Li Jinglong said, "Give it to me first." Lu Su handed the sword of wisdom to Li Jinglong, who barely managed to grasp it, his hand shaking the entire time. He said to Hung Jun, I am passing this inheritance, the exorcism department, to you. Hung Jun watched Li Jinglong calmly. He knew what this meant to Li Jinglong. Isn't it the same no matter which of you holds it? Zhao Yun piped up. Everyone thought, why is this Hua Shi Yao such a blabbermouth? But that sentence was very true. It's not the same, Li Jinglong replied. Hung Jun, take it. Hung Jun was a little anxious. The way things had developed until now was beyond what he had imagined or could even understand. What did Akala and Mara combining into one signify? Li Jinglong said, I have no strength, I'm going to drop it soon. Hung Jun held out both his hands, taking the hilt of the sword with one as he held the blade with the other, but when he touched the body of the sword, he suddenly changed his mind. No, I won't take it. The artifacts of Akala had killed his parents. If he had a choice, then Hung Jun would choose not to inherit them. If it has chosen you, Li Jinglong said, then there's no point to you rejecting it. I've touched it many times now, Hung Jun said. It has never recognized me. Hung Jun had touched the sword of wisdom before. Back when Li Jinglong first entered the exorcism department, this sword had been passed around by all of them to look over. If it wanted to recognize him as its owner, it would have done so long ago. When he got to this point in his thoughts, Hung Jun generously took it, saying, look, there's no point. What if you put your mana into it? Lu Su asked, frowning. Hung Jun first poured his mana into this sword, but there was no reaction at all. When he then tried the pentacolor sacred light, it scattered against the body of the sword. Even if the sword of wisdom had never recognized Li Jinglong as its owner, it was still able to break through the pentacolor sacred light, since the artifacts of Akalanatha were made to restrain Kongxian's deist powers. That's odd, Li Jinglong said, puzzled. Unless, aside from the physical sword, there's also the spirit of the sword or something similar. Do they need to be received at the same time? Everyone offered guesses for quite a while. Hung Jun was not willing to hold onto the sword of wisdom for long, so he handed it back to Li Jinglong. Perhaps it's because it hasn't been officially unsealed, Lu Su hypothesized. There's a section missing, but it's alright. Atai and Sayazai already found the waterway where the sword of wisdom had been hidden away all those years ago, so we can go back once more. No matter what, as long as we find the other 4 artifacts one by one, all we need to do is let Hung Jun unseal them. Li Jinglong let out a breath. Hung Jun, however, was frowning deeply, and he actually felt a little uneasy. He really couldn't figure out why Akalanatha had chosen him. But at least, after they crossed this bridge, everyone seemed to have gained some hope again. After all, as long as they found the rest of the artifacts, things would at least go all right. Hey, the gray wolf said, turning its head back even as it plodded on forward. Where are we going now? To Lake Poyang. Li Jinglong replied, it's a pity that we didn't know of this a little earlier. It's not too late, even now, the gray wolf said. Eldest, hurry up and make a decision, where should we go? Back to Chang'an, the Carpio announced loudly. I want to go home. Everyone replied in unison, we didn't ask you. The Carpio. Li Jinglong said, let's head up along the military road and cross through the Tong Pass first, before we figure out a way to regroup with the rest of them. My guess is that they'll head towards the Tong Pass as well, the Grey Wolf said in reply. Hebei and Henan had all fallen, and the citizens whose homes had been destroyed were all fleeing westward, trying to cross the Tong Pass to get to Chang'an. The Heluo Basin was filled with rebels that were plundering as they went, and black smoke rose from all across the plains. 9 out of every 10 villages had been set aflame. Corpses littered the ground along the military road, and the Grey Wolf pulled the snow cart along as it raced across the military road. If he was Atai, he would also retreat towards the Tong Pass. After all, that was the last safe place they had. The grey wolf ran along the military road for a whole night and a whole half a day after that. As it pulled the cart along, its strength began to flag. It no longer could race along for 3 days and 3 nights like it had in Liangzhou, so it found a copse of trees where it could rest, and where he took human form again. At twilight, they left the village behind. It had already been over 12 shishan since they had eaten anything, and they were all thirsty and tired. Morajin plopped right down onto a rock and said, "Give me something to eat, I'm going to collapse." "Look, at least I brought rice and flour," the Carpiao said, climbing down. "Otherwise, what would we eat?" For 100 li around them, the ground was littered with human corpses. The birds and the beasts had long since fled. Hung Jun said, yes, you're the smartest." "That's expected," the Carpiao said. "Zhao Yun, melt some snow and boil some of the food." "Zhao Yun, we didn't bring a pot." Morajin was totally done. "Why didn't you bring a pot?" "I said I was going back to grab it, but you didn't let me," the Carpiao replied. Everyone exchanged looks, before Lu Su said, "Let me see if I can find anything that will serve for the time being." Zhao Yun glanced towards the edge of the forest and said, "Someone's coming, I'll go snatch one." No, Hung Jun hurriedly said. "I'll go buy one, and if that won't work, I'll offer some food in exchange." Hung Jun gestured for the group to rest, while he and Lu Su headed towards the military ode. A group of people almost 1,000 in number had come up behind them, and they were speaking a dialect that neither of them understood. The refugees set up pots along the side of the road and began to cook, as Hung Jun and Lu Su went over. "We'd best steal one," Lu Su said. "If we get robbed at such a time, it'll be too dangerous." Hung Jun said, "Once we're done cooking, we'll bring it back. They won't be leaving for a while yet." Then, Hung Jun tossed the Yao binding rope out, which seemed to gain a life of its own. One end wiggled into Hung Jun's grasp, while the other one meandered along as it crossed the snowy ground, coiling itself around one of the pots on the citizens' open-top carts, dragging the pot back. Everyone ducked back into the forest, wolfing down a meal, before they shivered in the wind and let themselves sleep for a bit. Late in the night, some citizens came to try and hide from the snow. Zhao Yun was just about to shoo them away, but Hung Jun stopped him. "Let them come in," Hung Jun said. "Watch our things well." More and more people squeezed into the grove of trees to try and hide from the chill. It was really too cold outside, and the people couldn't handle it. Deep in the night, someone tried to start a fire, but they accidentally lit a tree on fire instead. With that, a large portion of the forest around them caught on fire. Lu Su was greatly startled, and he bellowed angrily, "Are you all insane? Let's go! Let's go!" Morajin hurried them, before he went outside and transformed into the grey wolf. It dragged the cart along behind it, leaving that blazing grove of trees behind. "We truly suffer such bad luck no matter where we go," Li Jinglong said, torn between laughing and crying. "There's only about one more day before we'll make it to the Tong Pass, so hang in there a bit longer." The grey wolf replied, "We'll still have to find a cave to rest in along the way." It was the 29th day of the last month, and the frozen bodies of citizens littered the sides of the military road. This year's winter was colder than any previous years, and before the mortals who had fled during the chaos of the battle could hold out until they entered Tong Pass, they fell to the combined pressures of hunger and the cold, and they died on the roadside. Upon seeing the scene in front of his eyes, Hung Jun felt that these cruel conditions were just like a nightmare that would never end. "I'm so tired. I can't pull it anymore," the grey wolf said, its tongue hanging out. "Hang in there a little longer," Lu Su replied. "We're almost there." In the distance were the cloud-shrouded peaks of the tall mountains. The grey wolf pulled the cart up the mountain road, and everyone stood halfway up the mountain, looking down. There were more and more citizens traveling along the military road, helping each other along as they went. The gray wolf said, I'm starving. Think of something nice. Lu Su did not relent in trying to encourage the gray wolf. It's almost the new year. When we get to Tong Pass, we'll have something to eat. The Carpio added, I'll make some cured meat and egg stir-fry for you all to eat. I'm even hungrier now, the gray wolf bellowed. Shut up. It was only eating a meal a day to begin with, and it had to pull the cart along as well. They couldn't find any wild game at all, and the refugees had even stripped the trees clean of their bark to find something to eat, so the gray wolf's head spun from hunger. It did its best to pull the group along. Let's get off and walk. Hung Jun also felt a little bad to see it suffering. Those of them that could walk then climbed off the cart, leaving Li Jinglong sitting on the cart, looking into the distance. Last year, where did we spend the new year? Li Jinglong asked. Dunhuang, Hung Jun replied. Last year you all were in the tower, the gray wolf corrected. Lu Su and I were in Suchang, and we managed to celebrate a bit. Atai and Seizai, on the other hand, were in Pangs, so they managed to celebrate it pretty well. This year, it looks like we'll have to spend the new year in Tong Pass, Li Jinglong said, letting out a long sigh. Everyone, get on, the gray wolf ordered, upon seeing that the road in front of them sloped downwards. With that, everyone hopped onto the cart, and even the gray wolf clambered on. That snow cart rattled as if it was about to fall apart, and accompanied by the wild shouts of the group, it slid downwards along the narrow, twisting mountain roads towards the military road below. There's so many people. Hung Jun exclaimed. I don't care, the gray wolf said in reply. When the snow cart was almost upon the citizens, it vaulted off and pushed back against the cart, slowing its forward momentum, and the cart landed firmly on the military road. The refugees, upon seeing such a large wolf, immediately began to cry out in fear, which caused a commotion. Lu Su gestured for the gray wolf to stay silent as he yoked it to the cart again, and the gray wolf began to pull the cart along at top speed, pulling it towards Tong Pass. The area in front of Tong Pass seemed to be absolutely covered in people, and the snow cart could not budge even an inch further forward, so within a whoa, the gray wolf hopped up to higher ground and vanished into the forest. They had no choice but to walk for the rest of the way. It was snowing heavily in the region right before the Tong Pass, but with almost 100,000 people squished together, it was at least a little warmer. Hung Jun and Lu Su hopped off to push the cart along, as they watched the crowd of people inch slowly forward. Mo Rijin passed through the crowd as he returned, clambering back up onto the cart. He steadied himself by pressing a hand against Li Jinglong's shoulder, saying, let me rest for a bit as well. It's not moving up in front, Zhao Yun said. Should I go scout ahead? Hung Jun hurriedly waved his hand. If a Yaogwai suddenly appeared here, the citizens would probably stampede over each other in their haste to flee, and if someone died in that rush, that would not be good. It's moving. Hung Jun stood on the snow cart and discovered that there were two very small doors at the foot of the Tong Pass, where they were currently carrying out inspections and letting people in batches. Who is the person in charge of defending Tong Pass? Li Jinglong asked. Gao, Lu Su said, narrowing his eyes and looking off into the distance. Who? Gao Xianzi, Li Jinglong replied. Perhaps my cousin has come as well. Just wait slowly, someone said from next to them. We might not even get into the city after 10 whole days. There were just too many people. Hung Jun said, I'll go see if I can find out any news. The Great Huabi Plains had been engulfed by the fires of war, and it was unclear where An Lushan's rebels had gone now. The weather was icy and chilly, and Hung Jun and Lu Su split up to try and get some news out of the people around them. End chapter.